What's up, guys? And the snezhnaya patch is a monumental patch in Genshin. We are actually getting a main character worthy traveler next patch. I am being serious, and this time actually a character you should be confidently investing in and build. Luckily, as always, the level carries over, so investing will just be your talents, your artifacts, and your weapon. And this is really cool. Not only is his kit strong, but we're getting a 5-star signature weapon for him just by doing the story, and you can refine it. I'm not going to spoil how you get this, but it is not a joke weapon. Exiphane's Blade. It's a real 5-star weapon, same base attack as other signature weapons. 33% crit rate. In 7.0, you're able to get it to refine 3. So 42% crit damage, 24% attack, and energy generation as well. The other crazy thing, if you aren't familiar with the Traveler, is he actually gets a ton of stats just from doing the story. Each of these elements is giving a stat. Like snezhnaya, you're getting 20% crit damage, Animo 10% crit rate, some energy generation from Inazuma, some EM from Sumeru, and all these stats apply to every one of your travelers. Obviously, if you're new and you haven't got the elements from each region, then go and do that now. I think you can get them all straight away, except for Pyro, which requires you to grind the Natlan story, if I remember. He also has an attack to EM conversion talent for even more EM. Anyway, so it's not just a ton of stats, but Cryo Traveler uses these stats better than previous travelers, on top of having a good kit, because Stellar Reactions use so many stats in its formula. You're using your crit stats, using attack, using EM. Honestly, looking at his stat screen, I was shocked. I hate to say it, it's almost like I have him inside a Bennett buff. Look at these crit stats, the EM, but putting everything together, the insane signature weapon, tons of base stats from his talent, you legitimately end up with a character before we even get into his actual kit that has a head start on all other characters. He has 2 play styles: in Stellarconduct teams as an on-field DPS, and Stellar Swirl teams an off-field sub-DPS buffer. That's not just me saying it, it's directly baked into his kit, and we'll have to wait and see if he gets more reactions in the future. So Stellarconduct main DPS, check this out. Whoa. He has an enhanced charge attack that does big Stellarconduct damage, and his burst that does big Stellarconduct damage. But just to clarify now, you only get this enhanced charge attack once per rotation, so it's supposed to be correct. So this is very nice to see. Traveler is one of the few characters now that can transform your team's reactions into stellar reactions, just like Odette and Sandrane. Basically, you use his skill which does damage and gives him cryo infusion. It also fires a coordinated cryo hit at the same time, as you can see. And this overall damage is nice, but it doesn't do insane damage by itself. It's the enhanced charge attack that does the insane damage. That's because his infused basic attacks are still just cryo damage, whereas the enhanced charge attack is a stellar glimmer damage, meaning it actually counts as direct Stellarconduct or stellar swirl depending on your team. Still, the infusion and coordinate attacks are important because, as we know, Stellarconduct teams scale with how much cryo and electro your team is doing. It also builds Frostglow stacks, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, if you're playing a Stellar Swirl team, then his skill doesn't give cryo infusion. What it does is, it just does off-field cryo damage. And again, the skill damage in these teams aren't amazing, but it will contribute to cryo application, which will increase your Stellar Swirl vortex damage. On top of that, it will increase his stacks of Frostglow and Icepoint. So onto the core of his kit, he has 2 types of stacks. One is the Frostglow meter, and the other is his Icepoint stacks. You get Icepoint stacks as your team does stellar reaction damage. What do you do with Icepoint? You do his enhanced charge attack, and you build Frostglow as you build the star up through normal attacks. What do you do with Frostglow? You do his super burst. The burst hits and the amount of hits are actually much higher if you have these full stacks. The weak burst is actually just 3 hits with a much lower multiplier, and the damage is higher, and you do 5 hits with your full A stacks. Now, honestly, one issue I have is it's kind of hard to see this meter build up in game. Especially with all the cryo reactions going on. It's all the same color as his Frostglow stacks. It's a bit hard to see. The 3 is the Icepoint stacks for his enhanced charge attack. If you're wondering where Icepoint stacks and his charge attack are in his kit, it's over here, foreign permafrost. It will also be here in this menu. His charge attack has 2 hits, so I'm pretty sure you add this 140 to both of the hits. So 280 gets added onto his normal charge attack multiplier, which should make it over 500% direct Stellarconduct damage at level 10. That plus you add up all the Traveler's free stats is why these charge attack numbers are so high. With its burst, it's the multipliers here. It might not look like direct stellar damage, but actually in the talent here it says his burst is converted into stellar glimmer reactions. So the charge attack activates after 3 ice point stacks, which is after your team does 3 stellar reactions. But I think this can actually be an issue because you're kind of relying on your off-fielders triggering stellar reactions regularly. And as you know, 4 stars don't deal direct Stellarconduct damage. In a team like this, which would have been pretty good otherwise, you're kind of shafted, aren't you? Can't really get it. Your teammates need to deal Stellarconduct damage, and this is one of the downsides I've noticed. If you don't have Odette, you are very reliant on Yae Miko. It's not an issue in the Stellar Swirl team since your whole team is constantly doing Stellar Swirls, but because Stellarconduct itself doesn't directly deal damage like Stellar Swirl does, you can run into this issue. Also, in case you might be wondering, because sword characters AoE has historically been kind of ass, the charge attack and burst have pretty good AoE, so that's a relief. Obviously, not as much AoE and range as Sandrone, but it's still not like you're charge attacking with Durin. So that's the gameplay of the main DPS Traveler. Use his skill, normal and charge attack to build your ice point stacks, which is your enhanced charge attack. Then when you've got 8 Frostglow stacks, use his burst for all 5. And then just set up on your team again. It's worth mentioning, this gameplay feel also makes him more of a burst DPS rather than a sustained damage. You kind of don't really deal that much damage, then all of a sudden, his enhanced charge attack and burst hits and it's a ton of damage. It's also kind of backloaded too. Is it a bit like a modern Eula playstyle? I don't know, maybe. And then with Stellar Swirl, he's more of a sub DPS because you build both your stacks off field. You won't get the charge attack on the first rotation though, because your team hasn't done Stellar Swirl reactions. So you just skip at the start. But then after that, you don't need to do basic attack spam. Just skill into charge attack into burst. And then move on with your life. Remember, in Stellar Swirl teams, he's more of a sub DPS. So don't even expect the same charge attack and burst damage as Superconduct, because his role is completely different, but he's still very good. This thing is also really nice. It's cool that unlike the 4 stars of Notcry, Traveler actually does increase the base damage of stellar reactions up to 7%, which is actually the same amount as Colombina gave for lunar reactions. And this is nice because a character like Aino not having this was a big handicap, and it only being on limiteds like Nefa 14%, Lauma 14%. Colombina had less because she was universal, but she still has it. This only being on limiteds did feel pretty restrictive, but it feels great that a free character in snezhnaya has this. For me, making stellar reactions already off to a great start. We also need to mention that he will get even stronger. So at a baseline, you will have his weapon minimum refine 1, but pretty sure in 7.0 you can grind it to refine 3 as you grind the story and explore. And as for constellations, you will be able to get until C2 in 7.0. His C1 gives him a bit of energy to help you get his burst up, which is very nice. And then his C2 gives 120 elemental mastery, which is also incredible. And this C2 is nice because it should work whether you play him as a sub DPS or a main DPS. I'm personally going to keep the other constellations a surprise. I don't know if other creators have shown it, but the point is, this isn't even his final form. You're going to get stronger as the patches come. I don't know exactly when you'll get more refines or more constellations, but it will definitely happen. Let's also talk about the build, because this is a historical moment. It's the first character and guide where we just don't need a weapon section. His weapon is free and it gives so much stats specifically for the Traveler that it's obvious I don't need to calc any other weapons. Just use this. There is no debate. To be fair, I guess it's worth mentioning, if you aren't using the Traveler, this can work as a stat stick. For example, if you didn't already have a high base attack weapon on him, then it's buff scale with base attack, so this could be nice. Also, don't worry about building for this EM talent. It caps at 2000 attack, and as we've covered already, without even trying, you're going to hit way higher than 2000 attack. For the artifact sets, you should be using the Deep Shadow set if you're playing him as a Stellarconduct DPS. For support in a Stellar Swirl team, it's a bit trickier because if you have Odette, you're going to want her on the Heart of the Furnace Stellar support set, which buffs your team's Stellar reactions by 50% and they don't stack. But I guess you can use Traveler on it as well if you have extra pieces, since it is convenient. Although he doesn't actually get the best uptime on this. You have to notice this. It lasts for 12 seconds after you trigger a Stellar reaction. And the Traveler triggers all its Stellar damage in one go on field. He's not going to be doing it off field. So your uptime is not actually going to be that high. High uptime on this set would be like Odette and Yae Miko. So instead, what you could do, I guess, is min-max your team boss with another set. Like Tenacity, get 20% attack. Or Noblesse, 20% attack. But honestly, that doesn't really do that much, because the main DPS of Stellar Swirl teams at the moment in 7.0 is Mizuki, and Mizuki's damage is scaling off of EM, not attack. So any set you're using on him is only really going to buff him and Odette. For main stats on your artifacts, you're going to want to go for an attack sands, an attack goblet, and a crit damage circlet. And then just use whatever has the most substats. Traveler is one of those great characters where he can fully benefit from so many stats: crit damage, crit rate, EM, attack, energy recharge. So you can use a calculator if you want, but if in doubt, just pile on the substats. Whatever has the most substats will probably be your best piece. Please make sure not to overcap on crit rate. You get a lot of crit rate by default. 10% from the Animo Traveler, 33.1% from the weapon, 15% from Cryo Resonance, and also if you're playing Stellarconduct, 16% from his artifact set. Honestly, I am overcapped here, because as a main DPS, 69% crit rate out of combat in the stat screen is 100%. And then 85% if you're playing sub DPS instead as well. Honestly, being realistic, if you're overcapped by a bit, it's okay. It's not like you can guarantee all your rolls going to crit damage and EM. So if it happens, it's okay, but just know that probably is one of the other issues with the Cryo Traveler. I think if you have insane crit damage subsets, it may even be possible to hit 300 crit damage, which is crazy. Being realistic, you don't even need this much ER, since Electro Traveler gives him 20% ER automatically, and you usually play him in double if not triple cryo teams. But again, you're just like with crit rate, you'll probably get a bit more naturally as you build your character. You'll probably also want to know your talent priorities. The biggest priority is the burst. It's his most important talent. You want to get that maxed out. Then your normal attack, then your skill. The skill isn't really important since these aren't actually stellar multipliers. And then the normal attack talent is okay, but it's a bit less important. A lot of his base attack multipliers are in talents, like this and that, rather than his actual talent level. Both of his teams are very flexible. Here's an example: Stellarconduct main DPS team. You can also use Diona, you can also use Sucrose, Alyosha should work, Beidou should work. Just remember, you're going to want at least one of Yae Miko or Odette, ideally, in order to help build its stacks. As for Stellar Swirl, these things are also flexible. Remember, in this team, the main DPS is actually Mizuki, and maybe we'll get some more in the future. You also have Farazan, you also have the Scuffed Sucrose options, like C4 Lanyan gives EM, Hazel can give EM, Yehoda can give EM. You can also use Diona instead of Odette. Chi-Chi is also very good. Honestly, Odette, Diona, Chi-Chi are all very good options for you to invest into because they work with all of the Stellar teams so far. And it's worth leveling them just for flexibility in snezhnaya. So here's some showcases.
Here, emerge right now.
So my thoughts on the Traveler being strong. I've thought about this, and in comparison to other games, Genshin Traveler has always been memed on, you can say, for not being that useful in combat. Sure, there have been niche scenarios like Geo Traveler in an old budget team, or when full damage cheesing, or Dendro Traveler at the start of Sumeru and Nilo teams, or Pyro Traveler, who was still decent in Overlord and arguably is still best in slot for Molani, but he's kind of there just to apply Pyro. Cryo Traveler, on the other hand, is fully utilizing the Traveler's lore strength this time. The fact that you can play him as both an on-fielder and an off-fielder is really cool, and I definitely expect many of you to be playing him all throughout your snezhnaya exploration. You can just swap reactions whenever you want to. If you're wondering how meta he is, he will definitely be very meta. Is he quite as strong as Sandrone? Not quite. Not only is he slightly behind her damage wise, but he won't have the AoE or sustained damage as her. You also can't really further invest into him, whereas Sandrone, you can get her weapon, you can get constellations, there's a lot more growth potential. Traveler does have his weapon refines and constellations, but it's not quite the same thing. But still, Traveler being this close, I think that is 100% good, because him being almost as strong as Sandrone, it takes me back to early Genshin where most characters were quite similar in DPS and it just came down to your preference. You had several options. I'm a big fan of this personally. I hope we get more similar DPSs in the rest of snezhnaya. There's only really two downsides I can say. The one downside is that he is very reliant on either Odette or Yae Miko if you're playing him as a DPS in order to build his Icepoint stacks. But if you have them or you're playing Stellar as well, then it's fine. The other is the reality that I'm sure you know, playing melee sword characters in Genshin is that they can kind of feel scuffed to use. Whether that's the slowness or the short range, especially compared to two of the other new Stellar DPSs like Sandrone and Mizuki, who just feel extremely smooth to play. Traveler can feel a bit clunky. Now honestly, it depends how you feel about it. Maybe to you he doesn't feel clunky, maybe he does. Try him out for yourself and decide for yourself. But outside of that, honestly, he doesn't really have that much downsides. And he's strong enough where I feel like as snezhnaya develops, I feel like I would get more strength investing more into his other teammates than replacing him with a new teammate. You could say he feels like he should be very cost efficient in the future. Now that could age badly, but that's my dream. Anyway, if you haven't already leveled him, I highly recommend it. You get these things as you play the story, so he's even easier and cheaper to level than other characters. Me personally, I'm going to snezhnaya with my Sandrone team and Mizuki team and Traveler team, and I'll just be switching between them all. Anyway, hopefully I correctly built up the hype for Cryo Traveler. I think the hype is definitely deserved. And let me know if this video helped you. Also, let me know if I missed anything in regards to Cryo Traveler. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.